there's actually a few eclipses before 2045. And let me show you why this makes me very excited. Oh, actually, I won't. I'll just tell you about the task force. So we've been meeting as a task force for many years, and these have become my family. We gather and Zoom, and it's just been very regular for many years. And there's already talk about the fact that at the end of this eclipse in April next year, that, the task force will end. There's conversations here at this meeting that this is going to be the last meeting. Now, I don't know about you, but this actually makes me panic. But just to say how supportive and how encouraging and the amount of resources that have been made available to everybody. So just want to acknowledge the role of the AAS. So thank you very much to all the leadership team and everyone who's in the task force as well. But it's like we all share what we love. It's not hard, right? So this is the next 15 years, until 2038. And look at crazy Australia. There's a lot going on. So we are very lucky that in 15 years, we have 5 total solar eclipses. And now we just had one in April. That was the first one. And it was a teeny tiny one. I don't know if you can make it out from over there. Just raised the tip of Western Australia. Hands up if you were there. Yeah. It was a bit tricky to get to, but so that was the first one. And there were some challenges in how that was planned. So, I was involved in the planning there and also involved in here for many years. I'm so struck at the chalk and cheese difference between how it was very safety focused and you can't look at the sun. That was the official. You can't use solar filters. That was the official guidance in Australia versus all this here where there's so many things going on and we're encouraging everybody. We've got giant glasses, eclipse tents. It's just great. So I worry about, the task force ending, and then I'm carrying on like solo in Australia. So the plea is don't leave me. I need you. I need all of you. And even though you're not a member, if not all of you are a member of the task force, if you're sitting there and you're in a community and you think, oh, that's sad, you can actually help me. So I'll explain why and how you can help me. You can help efforts for Australia. So as we know, and we've heard a lot during this meeting, it takes a village. And Rick said last meeting, I love that phrase, Rick. So I'm quoting you forever from now on, and I'm dedicating that image to you. So who do you align with, just so we can point it out in future? Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry. You're diverting from the question, though. Which one do you align with the most? Brilliant. But it is true. You can't do eclipse planning on your own. You really need a team behind you. Like, when you're in your communities now, you might be the person who you feel is in charge and doing all the heavy lifting, but you need your team. And you remember the guidance from the white paper, assemble your team, develop your strategy, and boldly go. So in Australia, I've been looking at partners for how we can move forward with eclipse planning, because we know that it can't really happen the way it happened for this past eclipse. There were so many errors, so many things that didn't go well. The planning and logistics of it was brilliant. It was amazing, and there is no fault there. But just the approach and how the messaging, we did have messages of, this is 96% totality. People were being advised to go to places along the coast for good viewing, even though it was outside of the path. There were so many errors and it was difficult to actually get things shifted. So because there are so many, the eclipse paths goes across Australia, most of the states, we need a national approach. And I'm really very keen to make sure we have something like this set up as a task force. And it's, where is that best positioned? And so, there's science groups in Australia, there's the astronomical groups, but we don't have this cohesion already. So there's individuals that are out there, we're wanting to work together. And I have found the perfect home, I think, and it's the Griffith Institute of Tourism. And the reason why I'm going for this as the home, so I've made approaches to be an adjunct for this institution. They already do research in the areas that the paths cross, and they actually are the ones who are getting a lot of the grant funding, leading the tourism approaches. And also Australia, Queensland, we have the Olympics in 2032. Yes, 2032 in Brisbane. So there is a huge amount of resources already in place. Community development, lots of consultations going. The infrastructure is there. The process of planning big events is there. And so for me, it's all about, when I advise communities, it's what's already happening on the ground. How can you actually just add that, use those resources to be able to do what you need? So I'm thinking that we can set up an advisory panel, tap into these things. I can access a lot more funding. Bring some of you guys over so you can share experiences and share your resources. And that's kind of, form our little village people over there. And just so Griffith University has research clusters. So I'll come back to those in a minute. So this is a closer detail map of where all the paths go. And I'm just going to show you a particular area of interest. That's in Queensland. Remember that Queensland is hosting the Olympics in 2032. All the investment of event planning management is in Queensland. And, thank you. And that's where the resources are. And coincidentally, there's community in the crossroads there that actually has a science, what is it? I can't remember, a particular drive. So it's an outback area. There's the Cosmos Centre. They're developing it for the dark sky tourism of Australia. And so it's a really natural fit to be able to build resources and to use that as a particular location of focus. And Griffith University already has a lot of programming going into this particular region, coincidentally. So I'm looking at just tapping into that to be able to use that as the framework to build up for eclipse planning. So, how I said that they had research streams? Now, what's really interesting is I was able to relate every single one of their research streams to eclipse planning. How cool is that? So I was able to convince them that actually this is a good home because we know we look at weather. We are very fascinated by weather. And the last few years of planning, we've had, in 2017, there were all the fires in Oregon. So climate change is impacting how we chase eclipses and how we need to prepare. In Australia in April, just before the eclipse, the week or two before, the coast was hit by a Category 5 cyclone, very devastating. We're going to have more cyclones. The heat records this year, and also, some of the path is in the tornado alley. So research about this is needed. So another stream is their events and sport management. So I was telling you that there's a whole lot of resources in there about a major event planning. So I was able to highlight that this framework, this approach is kind of similar to what we've been doing. And so that's a natural fit there. The future of aviation. So of course, there's all the eclipse flights. Hands up if you've done an eclipse flight, an E-flight. Of course, Dan. Yeah. And you have as well, Chris? So a couple of people have done that. And there's also the space flights that are happening now too. So the space industry and space tourism is certainly moving ahead. Resilient and sustainable tourism. This is the area that's huge. And this is where I've already started to do a fair bit of work. So I've done a lot of presentations in Australia about building sustainable tourism events around eclipses and dark sky tourism. So we're sort of linking the two together because we think that's a much stronger way forward. And there's been lots of preliminary research about the future of dark sky tourism, I think it's called in Australia. So a lot of that has already been done. But a long way to go. But there's funding for these things. So funding means that we're able to leverage the resources out there already and build upon that to be able to gather our team. The visitor economy and data analytics and indicators. It was so fabulous to have Michael's maps of the visitation, and I think that was quite an eye-opener for them to see that all this data is there. Like, we have a huge amount of resources within our little Eclipse community, and just how record-breaking the eclipses are in terms of the interest. And then special research areas. So my own project, OR, that I'm doing, so they have a biosensor lab in Australia, but the project that I'm doing, and I've got a poster on this if you want to read it further, but it's using EEG technologies to measure OR as it happens in the field. That is new and different. We're trialling it in October at Garner State Park in the Solar Eclipse Village. But it's that sort of stuff. It's projects like that that give it high profile, and that you tap into their research community. And I also, I've linked in with the Adventure Tourism Research Association. So that's the network that academic research that I have presented several times now on eclipse chasing and eclipse tourism. And I continue to do my little projects. After most eclipses, I interview lots and lots of people. So I gather stories and storytelling, and that informs how we communicate about the eclipse experience and our understanding of awe. So in the next few years, I'm switching over to more academic side of things. So that's why you've seen me, do the project OR and some of the other bits and pieces I'm doing. So how can you help me? When you're planning for the eclipse and whatever you're doing for your community, evaluate the impact that it's having. Like, capture the web traffic, capture stats that shows the interest. Capture write your research reports afterwards, because these events happen, and if the reports are not written up, people move on, all the data is lost. And it doesn't have to be like a big publishable report, even a couple of pages about, okay, this is what we planned, this is what we expected, this is what happened, this is how many people, here's how we got some feedback from these people. And we can calculate now, according to Michael's statistics, of, is it $200 or $300 per person per night? Between $200 and $300 per person per day. Yeah. So we can use that as a pretty good rough calculation. So do gather that and then send that into the AAS. So Deb is probably going to collate information like that. Because we need a place to bring all this information together. Consider involvement in Australia. Help me out. Share your expertise. So I'm hoping to get events like this going. So consider coming over. And so any of those research clusters. So I'm going to be looking at different ways of getting into that. So if you've got your own projects or things that you're doing and it taps into any of those, reach out to me, because we can actually look to see if you can be part of the bigger team. So remember, it's all about assembling your team, developing your strategy, and boldly going where no one's gone before. So I have some resources. So over the years, this year, it's been a very busy year. I've done a few posters for this event. So I'll be updating my community eclipse planning white paper after this eclipse. So I've already done the hindsight interviews for some of the events in April there for the Australian eclipse. But after this eclipse, I always tend to stay and interview people who've done the events. So afterwards, if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me, or I might reach out to you. And then the hindsight lessons, again, that gets fed into then the next version of the white paper, which will be focused on the Australian eclipses. So lots of resources there. And that's just a reminder while that's up. Okay. So don't leave me and come to Australia, because it's, we've got a lot of eclipses. I've moved back there now, so that's no coincidence. Thank you very much.